So no matter who you pick, Zoro versus Law is a tough matchup. Some who watched me before may be surprised to hear that, especially since I have a video saying Zoro versus Law is not even close. But that video was made while I was like sick and depressed. I also didn't possess the hindsight of how much people would ride for their arguments, or rather their favorite character. Which brings me to the idea I want to go over first. Why is this heavily debated? If you want to skip to the actual power scaling, time's right here. So it's no secret bias plays a huge role here. Zoro and Law are both amazingly written / designed characters in their own right, but they also share the archetype of what I like to call cool characters who always know what they're doing. This trope never misses, especially when using it sparingly. Even then, you would think Zoro has the edge because he's been in the series far longer, but no, because Law hasn't beaten the aspect of his backstory and mysterious factor. That perception isn't just an observation I've made, as a great example of Law's insane popularity being of course the 5th popularity poll, in which Law was the only character before and since to knock Zoro out of the 2nd place spot. After this, he has consistently ranked in the top 5 even on the world popularity poll, though Zoro vs. Law wouldn't be anywhere near as relevant if it wasn't for their actual power. In every arc where they feature together, even Sabaody, they are always portrayed as the 2nd best tier of fighters behind Luffy. Mosshead vs Sanji is another big debate, but the difference being that it's not close and most people already know the answer, whereas here it's really tough to say. Shanks vs Mihawk is a huge debate too, though we barely know anything about them. However, for Zoro and Law, we've seen their limits. Combine all that with the fact of them having opposing strengths, being best Haki or best Devil Fruit, it's understandable to see why many people think what they do, arguing for days. All of this to say, I am a fan of Mosshead, I am aware of my bias,
this shit means something to me, man.
And I will try to look at both characters as objectively as I can. So let's get into the actual stats, starting on Law. For these two sections, I'll cover the character's strength, speed, and hacks. What about battle IQ? Dude, this isn't Hunter x Hunter, it's not that deep. And even then, Trafalgar usually has prep time before all of his fights. In terms of attack power, his basic hits have never been shown to do much, but where he really shines is his named ones. Gamma Knife, Shock Willy, even the weaker Counter Shock have all been shown to do internal damage. The attacks are potent enough to work on Kaido / Big Mom, so Zoro getting hit by some of these is not going to be good. The extent of this being Puncture Willy, an extremely large attack that can put holes through islands. In all fairness though, that move does require lots of startup time. In terms of speed, Law reacts to and dodges the Emperor's attacks, though against Big Mom, he nor Kid ever outspeeds her. The Surgeon only ever hits Big Mom when she is distracted. It's the same thing with Blackbeard. The Yonko was mid-air / didn't know what Law's abilities were, however when getting to the ground, he easily reacts to the same attack he got tagged by. Trafalgar's best speed feat is being able to blitz Misery, but like, Kid dodged it easily. The anime is not canon, by the way. The hacks department is where the Surgeon shines best though. After activating his room, Law can freely manipulate objects using tact, teleport himself and others with Shambles, or most importantly for this vid, cut things like butter with Amputate. On top of that is his Awakening, which gives him more range, plus access to his ult, Puncture Willy. All of these fruit abilities take physical stamina though, often portrayed as his main issue. Some may say all of this is bull and Law is just a support character, but that is certainly not true. On the rooftop, he was level with all of his contemporaries, plus Law only became stronger fighting against Big Mom. The Swordsman of the Straw Hats is a different matter. Let me clarify that the fight will require Zoro to be in his King of Hell mode at all times, so that's the form I will speak on. With KOH, he uses Advanced Conqueror's Haki, durability negation for all of his moves. Using this ability, Roanoa was able to permanently scar Kaido, and judging off his performance against King, Law will not take too kindly to any of Zoro's attacks either, unless you think the captain has some insane inner durability surpassing Kaido. Like, no. Zoro's speed is the kicker for this entire video. Of course, there's the classic line of Ashura blitzing Kaido who blitzed Law a second later. That would make things pretty clear cut. However, Trafalgar grows in his battle with Big Mom, As said before, we don't have anything to show he became exponentially faster because of that, but it could be used to say he doesn't get clapped completely. The debate comes in when we look at King of Hell in relation to Zoro's Ashura form. See, there is evidence to say KOH is greater than Ashura. First off, both forms are similar in that they require Zoro to put all of his power into his attacks. Both use advanced Conqueror's Haki, which we know gives an overall stats boost as seen when base Luffy surpassed Gear 4, then King of Hell is being used when the swordsman is in better physical condition. You can't really argue this besides saying, well, Ashura is always Zoro's strongest attack. Sure, I guess. At the minimum though, King of Hell should be equal to Ashura. Luffy and Zoro were relative on the rooftop, the captain surpassing the worst generation when he awakened Acock. So Mosshead should be on a similar level with both Ashura or KOH. In which case, he would still be at least a bit faster as Law does not have any feats to say he surpassed the worst generation. It's not a blitz difference though. Maybe. Now we have two interpretations. The scary one saying Ashura blitzes Law gets faster but Zoro does too so he could just do it again, or alternatively the chill one where King of Hell is outspeeding Law by a smaller difference. As said earlier, I want to have as little bias as possible, so I will go with the chill explanation. There is still one problem though. Death Lion Song, one of Mosshead's fastest attacks, is able to blitz flames off King, a character who is far faster than Law. This single attack does have to be charged though. We can go even further as well and say the swordsman can stack another Ashura on top of King of Hell, but that's hypothetical, I won't go there. What's left? Oh yeah, hacks. Zoro has nothing anywhere near as special as Law, however he does possess the perfect counter for this specific fight. It's been explained / shown to us multiple times that Haki will always overpower abilities. In fact, Law himself performed this. It's non-negotiable, Zoro has greater Haki than him, meaning most of the surgeon's crazy abilities are now off the table, including but not limited to Amputate, Shambles, and Tact. Why can I single out these abilities specifically? Well, it's due to Kaido and Big Mom. The captain literally states he cannot teleport the emperors because of their overwhelming Haki. If he was able to cut them in half, he would have, and he also needs to move a boulder at Big Mom to throw her off the cliff instead of just throwing her. So Zoro with a bit of Haki flex can negate these hacks that make Law hard to deal with. This doesn't include all of Law's attacks, as the actual physical ones that need to touch Zoro, like Gamma Knife or K-Room, cannot be negated. The only way you can counter this is to say the Emperors have better Haki, allowing them to negate more. However, it's never shown to work that way. Either get greater Haki than Law, because he's the benchmark, or not. It's also why weaker characters who possess Haki can't negate fruit powers, they're just not as strong as Law. On to the point of stamina, Mosshead's King of Hell mode does drain him. It's not to the point some people claim where Zoro can't fight for more than 10 minutes. No, the swordsman's Haki is for sure depleted more while using KOH, however keep in mind King is Zoro's final fight. After using Haki the entire raid, he is just now low on it. Yes, he did take a drug to heal his physical body, but Haki and physical stamina have been implied to be different meters. An example being Luffy's ability to run around or flee even after Gear 4 depletes his Haki. In my opinion, Law's stamina is a detriment just as much as Zoro's Haki levels. They're fighting on even terms in that aspect. Now we can talk about the win conditions / arguments for each character, starting with Mosshead. Zoro's argument is simple in that it just goes off the facts I've listed. The Straw Hat has easier access to Duraneg and can hit harder than Law on average. He is faster, he can negate Law's most important powers. Very simple, these are just the facts of the story. All of Law's arguments just try to counter them. Another less impactful argument being the kid scaling. Rayleigh states Conqueror's Haki is directly based on an individual's growth, meaning Zoro is factually more powerful than Kid. He and Trafalgar are on the same level. Law would win that fight due to his hacks, but the fact is they have the same base stats. Zoro by this logic is factually greater than Law too. However, again, you can bring up Law's abilities, so the argument doesn't hold much weight. As said, Trafalgar's win conditions are these backwoods arguments against Zoro's. Some of them do hold value, but the first 4 points I'll cover are just blatant misconceptions of the story. The first point being amputate, or all of Law's powers. I already went over this 2 minutes ago, but for some reason people have a very hard time understanding it. Again, Law cannot teleport Zoro, he can't cut Zoro in half, nor can he move Zoro freely. He is able to use Gamma Knife, K-Room, as well as other attacks that actually need to physically touch his opponent. It is literally what happens with Big Mom and Kaido. Gear 5 actually supports this, as Kaido can't be affected by Law from a distance, but Luffy can turn him into rubber when hitting him directly. So to make it very clear, no, Law is not cutting Zoro in half. The flip side of this argument states, unlike Big Mom or Kaido, the swordsman will need to consciously emit Haki to negate Law's power. People use this to say Moss Head will be too overwhelmed, running out of stamina. However, Law was able to do the same feat in his fight with Blackbeard. He got infected by Doc Q's fruit ability once and it never happened again. Why can't the Straw Hat do the same? I've seen some try to make up scenarios like Law cuts Zoro, catching him off guard. Then before Zoro can use his Haki, Law hits him with K-Room, which, like, sure, but that goes into the realm of sticking a controller up his ass and playing out the fight. In which case, I'm sure people will come up with insane strategies in the comments to make Law win. However, you can argue King of Hell is always emitting Haki, so Law's powers are always being negated from the start. Plus, Zoro has seen the Surgeon's abilities. He knows what to look out for as well as how to counter it because Law literally told him. This kind of leads us back to the battle IQ thing. Sure, Trafalgar is more intelligent than Zoro, though it's not like his brains alone are going to win the fight. As said before, the Surgeon usually has prep time before his fights, like how he spent years planning to kill Doflamingo. And in his ultimate battle where he has the least amount of prep time, his master strategy against Emperor of the Sea Big Mom is to hit her while she is distracted. Top 10 plays right there. The next point is Shambles, which people use to try and up Law's speed. Because if he has instant teleportation, then it doesn't matter how fast Zoro is, right? The thing is though, we have to keep that same energy for every other character, making Law the fastest in One Piece. Shambles obviously doesn't work that way. Maybe it's like a flying Raijin type move, but he rarely uses it as such. Also, think about it. Law would need to constantly pick objects to switch out with, plus continuously use his powers, which takes up more stamina, also that he could keep up with Zoro's basic speed, not even counting his blitzing attacks I mentioned earlier. Now, a more convincing argument is the claim of Law always fighting stronger opponents. Because if the Straw Hat is struggling against a commander, then how can he beat the captain who fought a Yonko? I think this is somewhat true, but only if you ignore the actual context of these fights. Upon awakening King of Hell, Moss Head 3-shotted King and only took 5 damage from a random kick, all after he got the shit beaten out of him for not knowing King's abilities. A fully healed Zoro having knowledge of King's hacks would win easily. Compare that to Big Mom versus the Awakened duo, a fight where Law only hits his opponent when she is distracted, and even then they won due to a ring out, not actually killing her. That's not to take away from the fact he did most of the damage. However, people get so caught up in the idea of Law hurting an emperor, they disregard any argument Zoro has, which doesn't make any sense because the swordsman can do the same type of damage only at a more consistent rate. Though this leads us to the classic rebuttal. Narrative. The Surgeon helped take down 2 emperors and is portrayed as one of the front runners of the generation, side by side with Luffy. Or at least was, but you know what I mean. So he has to be more powerful than some vice captain. I feel that when people bring up narrative arguments, they look at it for one character and just use it to support their agenda, when really it works both ways. Sure, Law definitely has good portrayal, but what about his opponent? Zoro is one of the only 2 vice captains to be in the worst generation. He was the first on rooftop, forcing Kaido to dodge or at least make both emperors become wary of the new gen. Then he proceeds to block a combo from 2 Yonko, which no one else even thought of doing. After that, he carries on being one of the only 2 people in worst gen to unlock Advanced Conqueror's Haki, the power a handful in the world possess. I honestly don't know whose resume is better in this instance, which is why I refer to the actual feats instead. Even then, some overzealous people just say the fact of Law having an equal bounty to Luffy and beating Big Mom trumps everything Moss Head has. This goes into more of a feats versus narrative argument. That's a whole separate video, so let me just give an example. At Sabaody, Law and Luffy were on the same level of strength, however Straw Hat fought tougher opponents and was portrayed to be greater due to his bounty. You can use narrative to say he would win, but that's completely disingenuous, because you would be ignoring the fact of Law being able to one-shot Luffy with his power. It's just how the fight would go, same thing here. You can say Law has better narrative or whatever all you want, but then you're just ignoring a whole different element of the story. In my opinion, narrative and portrayal should only be used when we don't know anything about a character. Of course, we know everything about Zoro and Law, so it doesn't really work in this context. That's pretty much all the main arguments for each character. I know some will take my debunks as me just hating on Law, but first of all, half those points were just misconceptions. The only arguments that were actually good was the fact of Law always fighting stronger opponents and his narrative. Again, I think the matchup is a high difficulty battle. I'm not trying to trash Law in any type of way. The rest of the points are just chicken nugget arguments like Zoro beats Big Mom so he wins easy, or making a master strategy that allows Law to no diff, or some like. So, in conclusion, Roanoa Zoro vs Trafalgar Law is most likely a high diff battle. The Straw Hat is quicker and more powerful than the Surgeon, however, Law's abilities could be extremely devastating. The Captain may possibly come up with some master strategy to win, but it will be difficult for him, especially since Zoro is negating his most essential abilities. In the end, the Three-Blade Swordsman would take this matchup due to his superior base stats and Haki advantage.